Good day. This is Dimitri Lascaris coming to you from Montreal, Canada for Reason to Resist on November 26, 2024. After 13 months of savage warfare, Israeli and Western media report that Lebanon and Israel are on the verge of a ceasefire. But are these reports accurate? And if so, is this ceasefire likely to endure? Now here to discuss this with me is Marwa Osman, who joins us from Beirut, and Marwa hosts and produces the Lebanese political show, The Mid-East Stream. She's also a university lecturer at the Lebanese International University and Marif University. And I've previously interviewed Marwa, including for an episode of our Women of the Resistance series, and I'm very happy that she's able to rejoin us here today. Thank you, Marwa.
Thank you for having me, Dimitri. I hope you and the family are doing well.
And I to your family as well. Same wishes. My friend, we were discussing just before we started this conversation that there is one of these savage attacks that's taking place right now on Beirut. Could you describe to us what has happened during the day and what is happening now in the area of Beirut where you're currently situated?
Sure. Well, we woke up this morning at 8 a.m. to 20 maps all across the southern suburbs of Beirut, and then they started bombing certain areas in Dahi and the suburbs. And then at I think it was 2:40 or 2:35 p.m. Beirut time, I was online with my students in class, and it just broke out. I actually have it on video. I didn't have the time to retrieve the video yet because I was giving the online class to my students, and they hit a residential area, a residential building just a kilometer and a half away from here. And that residential building is 8-story in Nuwairi area. That's just a couple of hundred meters away from the Basta massacre that happened 3 days ago. And it actually had a displaced kitchen. It had 8 stories with displaced people living in it, and the first 2 stories were a displaced kitchen, a massive kitchen that would help people feed people who are displaced. So that went down, and there are some people don't understand how things happen. Right here, we have the southern suburbs of Beirut, which are literally just 5 kilometers away from the capital, densely populated area, which is a mainly Shia area, the pro-Hezbollah resistance area in the capital. You also have the southern part of Lebanon, you have the Beqa part of Lebanon, but the southern suburbs of Beirut is part of Beirut, but it is away from what's so-called the centralized government area. And it's just, as I told you, no more than 5 kilometers away. And they release on a daily basis maps. You can find them on the Zionist Israeli spokesperson, Afichai Adra'i. He's the spokesperson who speaks in Arabic. And he releases those vile maps every day to show us just minutes before they hit where they are going to hit, because they use this as a pretext of them notifying civilians that they are going to hit, and then they hit areas that are not on the map, killing scores of civilians as they usually do. Now, this afternoon, the new thing that happened is that, and they were boasting about it, the Israeli IOF spokesperson released a statement boasting about it, saying that we hit 20 airstrikes in Dahiya in 120 seconds. And when I tell you it was loud, it was loud. We had the pets running. How much it was loud. And obviously my girls are resilient and steadfast, just like their mom, but you could see the fear in the eyes of the child. And that's really what makes it hell for us. But everything else, we have adapted to it because we are fully confident in our resistance now. After that, 120 seconds for 20 airstrikes. They released those maps about Beirut, and they started actually as I'm talking to you. I think I did send you a video on just right now of the Barbour strike in Beirut. They bombed the Hamra residential area, the Barbour area. They bombed the somewhere near it's a very well-known area called the Kuwaiti embassy. It's right by the Kuwaiti embassy in Beirut. And there's another video that I can happily share with you that shows people leaving on foot because the traffic was crazy to a point that people just left their places. I'm sending to you right now and went on foot because they want to go out of harm's way. And that's what's been happening. Drones 24/7. But now at the moment, as I'm speaking to you, I can hear more than 3 different drones in the sky because they are targeting in the central part of Beirut apartments. It's some sort of like we're starting like this and then we will escalate and start getting buildings down, but they already did today. They brought one building down, but they specifically said, even in the maps, you can read that we are going to target specific apartments, stay away for 50 meters. Usually they say stay away for 500 meters. So this is part of, it's literally just watching a new episode of The Hunger Games if it were a series starring the Israelis. And it's horrible. It's horrific. No one should ever go through this, not even the enemy. No one should ever go through this. But since we are going through this, and since Gaza has been going through this for the past year and 2 months, I think we have every right in every religious book and secular law book that gives us the right to retaliate. Hence why I say, heads up, tonight Tel Aviv will see something new.
So the Israeli media, Marwa, is reporting right now and has been reporting basically from yesterday. I've checked every couple of hours to see what they're saying about this cabinet meeting. The cabinet of war criminals is going to convene this afternoon, they said, and it's now approaching 7 p.m. Your time and in occupied Palestine.
6:40, and they just released a breaking news just minutes ago that Netanyahu will be having a press conference, not a press conference, a statement from his office at 8 p.m. Beirut time. That's an hour and a half from now.
And there's no indication what the nature of that statement's going to be, whether they're accepting the ceasefire.
Well, if you follow the statements coming from the Israeli entity officials, you could see that they do not want a ceasefire with Lebanon. They are pushing for more war against Lebanon. And you read certain media coming from the American side, especially like that website that usually releases those, I don't know what is it called. It's at the top of my tongue. Anyways, there's this website that always releases statements from the government in the United States of America, and it says that Biden will be at 10 p.m. Beirut local time. President Joe Biden, Genocide Joe, will be actually releasing a statement, a televised statement announcing the ceasefire. So if that is true, then at 8, we will hear Netanyahu. Obviously, he wants to look like a hero to his own northern settlers announcing it. And if not, and I'm usually a pessimistic person when dealing with the Zionist entity. I've been asked this question by so many today, and my answer is I don't think there will be a ceasefire, but hope to God I will be wrong. I want an end to this war, but I'm following on a minute-by-minute basis the Israeli enemy media, and none of them want one. I mean, you could hear to Ben Gvir what he's saying. You could hear Katz, what's the Minister of War, and Ben Gvir, the Minister of supposedly internal security, if I'm not mistaken. They all want war with Lebanon. They think that they are winning when it's day 63 of them attempting to invade the southernmost villages in Lebanon, and they still are failing to do so. They tried Khiam, my hometown, for the past 4.5 weeks. The only thing that they were able to do was damage some buildings in the village, and I'm saying this on air for the first time. They took my house. They are stationing in my house Zionist genocidaires, vile pigs of the Israeli army. Took my house, which my husband and I have been building for the past 8 years, and we were able to live in for less than a year, stationed there as a safe haven for them. I pray to God that the resistance finds them and completely decimates my house, because I no longer want to live there.
Hopefully you didn't leave any of your, if you'll excuse me for being indelicate, your undergarments, because if you did, I suspect that those soldiers are going to be wearing them and then posting TikTok photos of them wearing them. Unfortunately, that's the kind of depravity we're dealing with, Marwa. In any event.
I know. Actually, what I left there, Dimitri, is a photo of the Merkava tank on its nose from 2006, and it's signed by Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah himself. It was given to me as a gift, and it's there in my big salon in my house. And there's another photo of me at the shrine of Haj Qasim Sulaimani. So I'm pretty sure when they entered, they knew which house they were entering, and I'm pretty sure they will either leave running from the strikes of our resistance, or hopefully, inshallah, have their fate in my house when the ceiling falls on their heads.
I suspect that's not going to enhance their feeling of safety in the house. But
Hopefully.
let's dig down into the details of this supposed ceasefire, shall we? So I'm
Of
just going
course.
to summarize for you, Marwa, and you probably know this all too well yourself, but our audience may not be aware
Sure.
exactly what it is that the media are reporting. So as I understand it, the broad outlines of the deal are very similar to UN Security Council Resolution 1701, which ended the 36-day war ignominiously for Israel in 2006. And so, in particular, what this means, again, I'm simply relaying what I'm reading in the media. Both the Guardian and the Times of Israel report this. Israel's military would withdraw entirely from southern Lebanon. Not that it occupies much land there as it currently stands, but nonetheless, whatever it's situated on, it would withdraw from that to the Palestinian side of the border. Then Hezbollah will pull its heavy weapons north of the Litani River, which is about 25 kilometers north of the border. It's not clear what is meant by heavy weapons. Then, during a 60-day transition phase, the Lebanese army would deploy to the buffer border zone. So, this would be the area between Palestine and the Litani River, alongside the existing UN peacekeeping force. Then long-standing border disputes will be discussed after the 60-day withdrawal period. And finally, the process will be monitored. Again, these are the reports by a US-led supervisory mechanism that would act as a referee on claimed infringements of the ceasefire. And the last item, which is not part of the ceasefire deal, but there's a lot of discussion about this in the media, is a letter of assurance that is not formally part of the deal, reportedly guarantees U.S. support for Israeli freedom of action if Hezbollah attacks Israel again or moves its forces or weaponry south of the Litani. And Hezbollah, we are told, has dropped its long-standing demand that Israel end its genocidal assault on Gaza as a precondition to a ceasefire. Now, I must say, Marwa, that I find several aspects of these reports very surprising, and I want to identify those for you. But before I do that, I have to say this. It's absolutely important. I don't want to be misunderstood. I have formed the view long ago that there is no people on God's green earth that is doing more to stop this genocide outside of Palestine than the people of Lebanon. There's nobody who has made as great a sacrifice. I think that's obvious, not even the Iranians. The Iranians, of course, have provided other forms of support. They themselves have suffered casualties. They have been attacked, but anything approaching what Lebanon has endured for 13 months. And Lebanon was already in a very difficult state because of the economic crisis there. So I don't want to be taken to be commenting negatively on the desire, if in fact this is accurate, the desire of the resistance to bring an end to this horror for the benefit of the people of Lebanon. No reasonable person would ask the Lebanese people to sacrifice more than they've already sacrificed. But nonetheless, having said all of that, the idea that Hezbollah has dropped its demand that Israel stop its genocidal rampage in Gaza seems to me to be a very major, if it's true, a major concession, because I understood that that's the reason why Hezbollah started attacking Israeli military targets in October of last year. What do you make of this? Do you think that this is a demand that the resistance has in fact dropped? And if so, why?
I think, first of all, thank you for your words at the end there, Dimitri. And I'd like to tell you that we have very close friends in Gaza itself. They're telling us that if this ceasefire is good, take it. They are the people who are telling us to take it. And concerning the dropping of the support front with Gaza, if you notice that after the war actually started, again, which is 2 months ago, 63 days ago, a war that Hezbollah actually did not want. And Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah had said that several times before. He said, we don't want to escalate. We just want the genocide to stop. And if you remember on October 8th, when Hezbollah started the support front, they started by targeting occupation bases for the Israeli entity on Lebanese land in Kfar Shuba and Shib'a and the القرى السبع, these 7 villages. So it is, according to international law, what Hezbollah was doing on October 8 was valid according to international law, because it was Lebanese occupied territory, not Palestinian occupied territory. Hezbollah said that we are doing this to support, to ease the pressure off of Gaza, but we're doing it on Lebanese territory occupied by Israel. And then Israel started to expand the scope of its targeting inside of Lebanese territory, and Hezbollah started to reciprocate. And if you remember well, at that time, people were saying, where is your weapons, Hezbollah? Why aren't you firing deep inside of Tel Aviv? What are you doing? Hezbollah had to, we were waiting actually for more than a month for Sayyid Hassan Nasrullah's speech, and it was on November 3rd. It was almost a month till he actually made a public speech, and it was a historic one. You can find it on YouTube. And he said, we do not seek a war. We do not want to see Palestinians being killed with impunity while the world watches and turns a blind eye. So Hezbollah never wanted a war. And then fast forward to September 17, the Pagers terrorist attack on Beirut and on all of Lebanon, 5,000 explosions, simultaneous explosions, taking out the eyes and fingers and waistlines of civilian humans, not only Hezbollah officers who are civil officers of Hezbollah, not military ones, but also doctors, nurses, everyone who uses pagers in the area that bought these pagers throughout the years. And then the next day, September 18, we saw the attack of the walkie-talkies as well. That by itself started a war with Lebanon, because a day after that, on September 20, was the assassination of the 13 Radwan forces leaders. That was an actual start of war, aggression against Lebanon. So that stopped what Hezbollah had already started, which is the support front. It turned into a protective defensive front for Lebanon. When that is now the case, so it's directly between Hezbollah and Zionist Israel, the norm is to try and find diplomatic grounds to stop the massacres in Lebanon, because for the past 2 months, we have lost 3,500, actually more than that, but it's, let's say, 3,500 Lebanese civilians and more than 15,000 wounded. And as we speak, there are bombs still falling and civilians are losing their lives. So it's no longer a matter of being supportive to Gaza as it is being defensive against Zionist Israel, which have proven that the Israelis had planned this attack against Lebanon by implanting the PETNs in the pagers. Some pagers were bought in 2022. The batteries of the walkie-talkies were reportedly bought in 2015. So as far as 2015, Zionist Israel has been preparing for day zero to start, which is pagers attack, bombardment campaign, because you saw it was September 17, 18. It happened 5 days before the wave of attacks on September 23 and 24. Why did that happen? Because 2 members of Hezbollah actually found out about the pagers, because the pagers were not functioning properly, and they sent in an internal statement asking to go back to the old pagers. And hence why they were detonated, which also proves that the infiltration, the intelligence infiltration of the Zionist entity was at the level of the internal communication within Hezbollah. Hence why we saw all these leaders being killed the first 2 weeks, 10 days actually of the war, including Sayyid Hassan Nasrullah himself. Now, this change, it was a game changer. So when you come to a certain point where Lebanon has, I don't want to say paid a heavy price, because we are not paying a price. This is part of our struggle, whether it is to support Gaza or to defend Lebanon. But the losses are massive, but it's all material losses. On the ground, what has Israel really achieved in Lebanon? Absolutely nothing. Today, they said that they were celebrating that the first Israeli soldier touched the water in Litani. They literally obliterated a town called Kfar Kala, which is a town beside Khiem. There's no more buildings in Kfar Kala. Completely decimated it. They took 2 or 3 tanks, went from Kfarkila to the nearest Christian town called Deir Mimas, which did not allow Hezbollah fighters to operate, and Hezbollah honored that request. They took that town, they called the mayor, they told them, let your people know that they should either leave or stay at home. We took the town. They took the town, which is less than 1.5 kilometers to the Khardale, which is the nearest point of the Litani River, the Khardale River, which, by the way, is, if I'm not mistaken, like 4 or 5 kilometers away from Khiam, which is about 10 kilometers away from the border. So they took the nearest point of the river without a fight, because the actual fight is happening in Khiam and they couldn't take it for the past 4 months. And they retreated because it is a valley and it is open to the cornet that can be sent at least 15 kilometers away, all the way from Iqlim Tufah region, where Melita, if you've been to Melita, if you've ever been to Melita, if they stay at the Khardali point of the river, you would have Cornet all the way from Melita hitting them. So they would be sitting ducks. So they touched the water and they left.
Right.
So that's what has been happening.
I stop you there. I just want people to know Cornet is an anti-tank guided missile, which has been used to devastating effect. I want to come to this very question. But
let me just finish this, which means that it is not dropping the support system for Gaza. It is giving a compromise to find middle ground. And the compromise from the Israelis would be that they would go back to before October 8th. Anything that you hear in the media, when it's 1701, they say the Lebanese military, welcome. This is our military. Why wouldn't we want them there? They say that they want freedom to operate. Absolutely not. I can tell you that with confidence and with confirmed information. Absolutely not. Hezbollah was very clear, and Nabih Berri and the speaker Nabih Berri said it to Amos Hochstein. He said, if Israel fires a bullet, Hezbollah will retaliate with a bullet.
So let's just talk about the reality of the situation. I want to dig down deeper into this. By the way, this incident, this theater of going to the nearest point of the Litani River and doing a photo op, that was today. That happened.
They issued a statement about it today, yes, but we didn't see any photos or videos about it.
So this.
By the way, we just saw the video from the Deir Mimas church where they desecrated the church. That is the nearest point to the Litani River.
So this actually suggests to me that they may be seriously considering entering into a ceasefire, for what that's worth, because it sounds like they're trying to stage this. They want to be in a position to say before they agree to the ceasefire that they reach the Litani.
Hey, we got to the Litani River. Yeah, that's exactly what I was telling my students today.
Wow,
yeah, that's exactly what I told my students.
A Hollywood B-grade production. In any event, let's talk about the reality of the situation. So let's say they enter into a ceasefire. As I indicated at the outset, the Litani is approximately 25 kilometers from the border, and let's assume as well that Hezbollah removes its heavy weapons north of the Litani, and let's assume that heavy weapons means all of its missiles, okay? All of it. Now, as we've seen throughout the last 13 months, Hezbollah can strike targets that are far more distant from Lebanon than 25 kilometers. They
don't need to be by the Litani.
Correct.
Who said that Tel Aviv is being bombed from the Litani?
Absolutely. They could probably reach, into the Negev from points north of the Litani River.
Yeah, exactly. If they shoot from Litani, it will go all the way to Egypt. Why would they do that?
Right. So with that as background, the whole theory we were given by the genocidal regime for the so-called invasion of South Lebanon was they were going to create safety and security for the settlers.
A buffer zone to let the settlers go back to their homes, and the land that they grabbed from the Palestinians.
Unsurprisingly, because the people who actually are going to have to live in these settlements, if they return, have a different view about what has been accomplished than the Netanyahu regime. And the mayors of Metula and
Margiliot, did you hear him? Did you see how he's going crazy?
He's going nuts. He's saying that this is a surrender deal. This is a surrender deal. So talk to us about what do you think is going on here, Marwa.
Let me just start by telling you what's happening on our side.
Right.
And look, despite the pain, if you see me smiling a lot, this is just part of the PTSD, and this is how I deal with pain and with sorrow. But at the same time, I'm so proud of being part of I'm so proud to have lived through the times of this resistance. But in Lebanon, I'll give you me. Don't mind the people that are waiting. I swear to God. I swear to God, Dimitri. Last night, there were people sleeping in their cars waiting for the ceasefire to be announced so they can go back home in Lebanon. I swear to God. Now, what do you want from people? You may think that it's an exaggeration. Look at me. I'm a civilian, right? I'm an assistant professor and I work in media. I don't have any military jobs, or affiliations. If a ceasefire is announced tonight, I will not risk my life by going up tonight, but I assure you, by dawn, I will wake up, do my morning prayers, and I'm going home to Khiam. I don't care what happens. I'm going home to Khiam. I don't care if they set a checkpoint in Der Mimas. No one is going to stop me from going home to Khiam. This is the sentiment right here. And Khiam is right at the border. It's not like a kilometer. It's right at the border. And it's not me showing resilience. This is my house. This is my house, my land. Where am I supposed to go? They decimated Beirut. Where am I supposed? I need to go to the house that supposedly is still up. But since they are staying in it, I doubt that they will leave it as is. I don't care. I have it. Oh, I already bought a tent. I have it in my car. I bought a generator, a 15 ampere generator to also use for electricity, and I'm going there. This is the sentiment here in Beirut, in Lebanon in general. Now let's go to the Israeli side. If you read all the statements coming from the officials in the northern part of occupied Palestine, the mayors and the governors and the people, I was watching today one of the Israeli entity settlers from the north screaming her lungs out, saying that we've been bombed. Our towns have been completely brought down to the ground for a year and 2 months, and they only screamed ceasefire when Tel Aviv, when what she calls the internal cities. When the internal cities were targeted, this is unfair. And then she starts a complete rant against the Zionist entity and the regime and the war cabinet in general. This is the sentiment inside of Zionist Israel. The mayors are screaming they don't want a ceasefire, not because they want the war to continue, because they're afraid. They are, they cannot imagine going back to the towns, which, by the way, the same destruction that happened in the Lebanese side, that same destruction on the towns that are bordering South Lebanon, also completely destroyed. I remember Metula, it was as massive and densely populated as Khiam was. Yes, we didn't see them on the streets because they are so afraid all the time, and we would be like hanging there on the fences trying to provoke the Israeli entity, because that's who we are, basically. We're used to this kind of provocation, if you will. But despite that, it was densely populated. Now they have nothing to return to. Just like Israel detonated complete entire neighborhoods and areas and complete towns, Aslan, in South Lebanon. Now, Khiam is more of a small city or a big town. So they did detonate a number of neighborhoods, but Khiam is massive. But compared to other villages in South Lebanon. But the Metula area and the Margeliot area, which is occupied settlements in northern occupied Palestine, decimated. They have nothing to return to. And if they return, they're going to see something they've never seen before, which will scare them even more, because they are not natives to the land to say, we will rebuild, we will come live here. They don't have people sleeping in their cars waiting for a ceasefire to go back home. This is not because they are occupiers, colonial settlers. That's the difference between us. Of course, we want a ceasefire, but we want a ceasefire in Gaza as well. And of course, we want to go back home. But even if a ceasefire happens and we go back home, we will still be devastated for what's going on in Gaza. But if this ceasefire works out in Lebanon, I I personally believe that it will be the first step into a ceasefire in Gaza. Now, Gaza will be a completely different idea because Zionist Israel, with the green light from the West, has decided to completely reoccupy Gaza. And I don't think that even if a ceasefire is put in place, I don't think that I don't think that the war will stop because the resistance in Gaza will not accept. If I am a resident in Gaza, I'm not going to be accepting that after a year and a half of genocide to go back to whatever home I have left, or at least rubble I have left, and then be searched at every checkpoint. They are making sure to create 4 different axes all across, dividing Gaza into 4 different parts. I don't think the people of Gaza will accept that, nor will the resistance accept that, which means that this will drag on until something massive happens. And does this mean that if a ceasefire happens in Lebanon, that the war will stop in Lebanon? I beg to differ. I'm sorry to say, but this is how I'm saying it out, like I'm saying it objectively, out of any emotion, because no one wants war, Dimitri,
And Marwa,
especially this kind of war.
I just want to stop you there
But
because I want to talk about that specific issue, and I want to give our audience a little background, which will inform the discussion about what is likely to happen if the ceasefire is in fact put into place. Sorry to interrupt, but I do think this is important information. So, as I mentioned at the outset, the reports are that the Lebanese factions, as they call them, which would include, of course, Hezbollah, have agreed that the ceasefire will be monitored by the Americans. So apparently there's a committee that is going to be set up, and the Americans are going to chair the committee. And the only other country that's been identified.
I'm still here. I'm still here, but the electricity is gone. It's going to be coming back.
Okay. The only other committee member that's been identified is France, which, in my opinion, is basically a vassal of the United States. And so not only has this deal set up the Americans as the adjudicator of whether or not one side or the other is complying with the ceasefire, but the defense minister of Israel, the current one, this character Israel Katz, vowed today to, quote, intervene militarily at even the smallest infraction, including stopping the Iran-backed terror group from rearming near the Israeli border. And we will act, again, I'm quoting, we will act against any threat, anytime and anywhere. Now, it seems to me, Marwa, that you'd have to live on planet Mars to believe that the Americans are going to be impartial and fair in adjudicating whether or not one side or the other is violating the ceasefire.
When has it ever happened in history, Dimitri, that the actual provider of weapons against one side of a war becomes a mediator?
Right. So we're on the same page here, and it's preposterous to claim that the U.S. is a genuine mediator. They are a co-belligerent. They are firmly on the side of Israel. They are even giving weapons to Israel.
For the love of God, Dimitri, Amos Hochstein was an IOF soldier.
Correct. That's how ludicrous.
The U.S. envoy to Lebanon, who is mediating the talks, was in a previous life a person who drives a tank in the Israeli army.
Right. And mediating in quotation marks, of course. So my question to you, Marwa, is, I mean, surely the leaders of the resistance understand perfectly well that the Americans cannot be trusted to be adjudicators, and they're obviously hearing statements coming from Katz and others in the Israeli military that even if they decide in their sole discretion that there's the slightest infraction, they're going to resume attacking Lebanon. Then what is the whole point of this? I mean, the part about this deal that really, I wasn't surprised when I read that they dropped the demand about Gaza because of the suffering that the Lebanese people have experienced and the extent of their sacrifice. That didn't surprise me. What surprised me was the agreement. We're being told it's part of the agreement that the Americans adjudicate disputes. So what do you think is going on here? I mean, why would Hezbollah agree that the Americans can be the adjudicator? And if they have agreed to that, is there any realistic prospect of this war actually coming to an end?
I don't think this war will come to an end in the regular sense of the way, but I think we will see a stop of the wave of attacks on Beirut and on residential areas and a retaliation by Hezbollah. But we might go back to what we were seeing at the beginning of the war, where it happens right at the border, or we might even see something more developed than this, which is an intelligence war, an intel war on both sides, meaning strikes similar to ones. By the way, as we speak, Israel struck Homs in Syria, and it struck Baalbek, and it struck the southern part of Lebanon in Saida, and it struck Beirut again, as we were speaking. So they bombed two different countries, several areas in one country, and they are still having a genocide in Gaza. But what I think might happen is in order to safeguard from the Israeli entity side the return of the settlers to the north, it would be them utilizing drones for assassinations. But it's going to be a bit harder for them, knowing that they already achieved all the targets they needed to achieve against Hezbollah military targets intelligence wise, and Hezbollah was able to detect where the infiltration was and completely cut off that infiltration. Hence
Sorry,
why in the last
can you tell us
three Zionist
more about
attempts of assassinations, they failed. They killed civilians, but they failed to actually, they would announce that we are trying to kill X or Y or Z. The last three assassinations failed, which means that Hezbollah was able to get to the part where he was infiltrated intelligence-wise. What we might see, Dimitri, is something similar to what's happening in Syria. Systematic targets against certain military posts or targeting certain people. It can be anywhere. But Lebanon is not Syria, to the sense that Syria has its own war going on, and Lebanon has Hezbollah already all focused on Israel. So if Israel wants to do the Syria doctrine on Lebanon, Hezbollah will definitely have to retaliate equally. And this is what we have been seeing since 2006, not since now. Since 2006, we had 17 years of no war, but we did see a couple of times of skirmishes, and it was equal by equal. You kill one here, we're going to kill one there. And I have many examples for that. But what's going to happen in the day after, for me, the most important day after would be the Gaza day after, because it would have definitely retaliations and reverberations across all the region, not only in Lebanon. So that's what we are waiting for, to see some real change. But for now, we might see some sort of a ceasefire that would stop the massive bombardment of civilian areas. But that does not mean that Zionist Israel won't stop targeting Hezbollah, and Hezbollah won't keep on retaliating in a limited way. I'm hearing bombs, so.
Sure. By the way, as you're speaking, well, let me first of all ask you the question I wanted to ask you when I tried to intervene earlier. Sorry about that, but I was very curious. Can you say anything more about this infiltration point? What was the do we know how the Israelis were acquiring information about the whereabouts of senior figures of the resistance?
Yes, two ways. One, treason, and two, the internal communication tools of Hezbollah, which are not part of the internet or the official Lebanese lines of communication. They are private lines of communication, and they are wired lines of communication. So they were able to infiltrate that in order to know the whereabouts of the leaders and assassinate them accordingly, starting from not Shukr, by the way, not starting from Al-Aruri himself. From that point.
For the benefit of our audience, who's that individual, Al-Audi?
Al-Aruri is the spokesperson of Hamas in Lebanon at that time. Okay. Yeah, so he was assassinated. It was the first strike on the southern suburbs of Beirut. It was at the beginning of this year, and they killed Al-Aruri in a airstrike. They hit 6 missiles, only 4 of them, or they intended to detonate only 4 of these missiles, so they would only kill Al-Aruri and his entourage. So that it started from there.
Right. Okay.
Which indicates the infiltration of the internal communications of Hezbollah, because they were supposedly in the protection of Hezbollah. Right. The second level is the treason. Treason helped achieve the first objective, which is you needed manpower in order to infiltrate, to physically infiltrate the wires of the communication system for Hezbollah. You needed someone to put that thing where it's supposed to be put, and there you go. So that was infiltrated. And you have the treason part, which there is certain reports coming out that it's not only at the level of logistics, which allowed for the pagers and the walkie-talkies to be used, because there is two reports that say, the first report that says that the person who was responsible for getting the walkie-talkies and the pagers was not a traitor, but was actually a bit of a, if you will, proud person, that he wouldn't allow another department that was supposedly responsible to like to take those. I mean, there's one department in Hezbollah that does the buying. They do the order, they buy those things. For the first mistake that they did is that they bought with lower prices from companies that are unknown. That's the first mistake. The second mistake was, when that department buys, it's supposed to give it to another department to check it out, to make sure that it is not infiltrated. There was some sort of a bickering at the level of the leadership, where this leader did not like that leader. Hence why he didn't want him to come and check up on his material, because he was over proud, overconfident, and a disaster happened because of that pride. I'm sad to say that that person no longer exists. He might have been killed with the leaders, or he might have been killed. That's
This is
the issue.
believed to have committed treason,
Yes.
essentially, right?
Yes. And then you have the actual treason that happened at so many levels. You have at the levels of people who give information about sites and centers. They can be regular people living in the area, because the sites and centers are not like, they're not in Narnia. They're right there. We know that this is a health facility for Hezbollah. We know that this is a social center for Hezbollah. You just need a person, and that person can be non-Lebanese. It can be anyone living in Dahia or passing through Dahia, and just take photos and send. That's the level A. Then you have the level B at the level of trying to infiltrate second and third base commanders. And then you have a level C, which is infiltration at a very high level, one of which directly resulted in the assassination of Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah. And according to initial reports from very good friends, that the main reason for that assassination to be achieved was a treason made by the person who was supposedly the person who installed the ventilation system underground for the offices of Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah. So he had the plans for the ventilation system. He didn't know what these facilities will be used for, but he had an idea, and Israel had great intelligence to a point that they reached that man to buy him off, and he is no longer in Lebanon. Because he asked, according to the report, he asked his son to drive him at some point before the war to the one of the villages in South Lebanon. And his son did that, and he told him that, I'm going to be meeting friends, you can go. And then he entered into Palestinian territories from there. That is the report that we have amongst us, that we were told from very good friends that confirmed this. So had it not been for treason, Zionist Israel wouldn't have been able to find the location of Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah, not even with AI technology, because Hezbollah, with that sense of security, operates like it is literally the Stone Age. They don't use any security measures that has to do with technology at that specific level.
Right.
So that's how that happened.
So let's talk about Iran for a moment. As I indicated, the Iranians have suffered attacks. The last attack by the Zionist entity, I believe, was October 15th. It was mid-October. And there have been clear statements out of the leadership of Iran that there would be a severe retaliation. And we are now, about 5 weeks, maybe more than 5 weeks beyond that attack. We have not seen anything. Of course, in the interim, the U.S. election has happened. Donald Trump delivered a serious ass kicking, if you excuse my French, to the Democrats, both not only at the presidential level, at the level of the Congress, the Senate, and I'm sure that that is something that is weighing on the minds of the leadership of Iran. How does this election and the victory of Trump and also the people he is surrounding himself with, who for the most part seem to be ultra extreme, wild-eyed hawks when it comes to both Russia and Iran. How is that impacting the calculus? What do you think Iran's intentions are vis-a-vis retaliating for the last attack by the Zionist entity?
I have no doubt that they will retaliate because what we've learned from experience with our friends in Iran is that they do retaliate. They make a promise and they keep it, but they take their time. They take their time really, really well. It's something that even Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah used to joke about because after the assassination of Fuad Shukr, one of the most senior consultants to Sayyid Hassan, military consultant to Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah, who was killed on July 28, Sayyid Hassan, Hezbollah was supposed to retaliate, but it was supposedly going to happen simultaneously between Hezbollah and Iran. And after waiting for 40 days, on the 40th day of the assassination, Hezbollah retaliated, and Sayyid Hassan said, "We waited. We cannot wait more than 40 days. I'm sorry, my Iranian friends." He made a joke about it, and he said that the Iranians have this policy of being so patient. We don't have this kind of patience. So this is the difference between us and the Iranians, but it's more of a strategic development with the Islamic Republic of Iran. They will retaliate, but as they waited at that time, they were waiting for a ceasefire to happen in Gaza. That's why because the Americans told them, don't do a strike, we're going to have a ceasefire. They waited and waited, and then they found out that the Americans are lying again. Then they did the October 1st retaliation. Now, I think they're waiting for a retaliation for Hezbollah, for a ceasefire to happen between Hezbollah and Zionist Israel. That's why they're waiting for that attack to happen. And I think they are waiting because they want to try and use that as a leverage to stop the genocide in Gaza. So they're waiting to see if a ceasefire actually happens between Lebanon and Zionist Israel. And then after that, they might start increasing their rhetoric and their retaliatory if you will, threats against Zionist Israel to try and push them to stop the war on Gaza. I don't think that Netanyahu will listen, and I think the retaliation will happen. We will see more Iranian missiles landing on occupied Palestine. That's something for sure. Now, when it comes to what's happening in the U.S. and the elections, and with Trump, and with everything that's happening in the United States of America, everyone's watching it. Everyone saw how very systematically Trump picked his so-called upcoming administration that's supposed to be a MAGA administration, but it simply looks like a Israel First administration, not a MAGA one. But honestly, I'm not surprised. I don't know why anyone would be surprised. This is Donald Trump, and he's a kind of man who only thinks about what's good for him, not at the present term nor the near future term, but on the very long term. And he's a businessman. So he's looking into securing what comes after his 4 years term. He doesn't really care. He says that he's coming back to make America great again. No. He's coming back to secure a couple of laws that would make the conservatives breathe a little in the United States of America against all of this liberalism, wokeism policy that the Democrats have been pushing in the United States of America. And it will positively not affect anything outside the borders of the United States of America. Now, Trump said he's coming to stop wars. I don't see that happening because the deep state in the United States of America is making the world believe that Biden is now about to start World War III when Biden doesn't know what his name is or what year it is. So the deep state in the US, which is the military, the industrial complex in the United States of America, is pushing for a big war, possibly a nuclear war with the Russian Federation against Europe. And I don't understand why Europeans are being pushed towards that. Don't they have a self-determination? I have a lot of questions for my European friends, but seeing that happen and listening and listening to what Trump was saying, that he wants to come and stop all wars. And he even gave an ultimatum to Netanyahu himself, telling him, look, until January 6th, until I set foot in the White House, you need to end this. I will help you out in every way possible, but you need to end this because I promised in my campaign, I promised my voters to stop the war. What the supporters of Trump want to see, Dimitri, is not peace in the world. They just want their boys back home. They have every right to ask that, by the way. They want their boys back home. They don't care, not the slightest, about what happens in Gaza or Lebanon or Syria or Yemen or Iraq or Libya or whatever you want. They do not care, and they don't want to have anything to do with us. Yes, they want to support Israel, but they want Israel to do the fight for them. And what Netanyahu is trying to do is to push the US in order for it to start its war with Iran, because Netanyahu knows for a fact that he cannot handle the Islamic Republic on its own. He cannot handle Iraq on its own. If Iraq full-fledged starts a war against Israel, it will decimate it. What do you think will Iran do if it starts a war against the Zionist entity? So he's trying so hard to push for direct war between the US and Iran. Trump will not do it. Trump even said that he's going to be cutting down sanctions, not necessarily against Iran, but he said sanctions are hurting American economics. So the American economy is suffering a lot because of the huge amount of sanctions that is happening, but it doesn't mean that he will ease it on Iran. He might ease it on everyone else except Iran. As a matter of fact, he might increase sanctions on Iran, but not start a war of Iran. Trump has proven to be a person that does not want to see wars, but can sign any paper that would make any leader happy with him, including signing a paper that says that Jerusalem is the capital of Israel. Look what that made. That small paper actually was the big spark that ignited Al-Aqsa flood, because Palestinians were looking all around them, seeing that countries that have never been at war with Israel signing peace treaties with Israel. It makes no sense whatsoever. The UAE and Bahrain and possibly Saudi Arabia next, and they've never even shot a bullet at Israel, but they're signing peace treaties, while I as a person in Palestine, I cannot move. I don't have the freedom to even move freely in my own country. So that was a tipping point for the Palestinians. So yes, policies made by Trump in the future will directly affect how things on the ground happen here. But we will never see Trump declaring war against any other nation. This is not who he is. Now, we might see some sort of a pushback from the generals who pushed back on his decision to leave Syria. If you remember, before he left office, he signed a decree to pull back American forces from Syria. That never happened. On the contrary, we saw more American boots on the ground, which tells you that it is not the illusion of a president that makes decisions in the United States of America. It is not. It will never be. It has to be decimated from within. The regime should change from within for us to see real policy changes across the world. And I think that is coming, and coming fast, if they keep poking that bear in Russia.
So I want to conclude on the poking of the bear, Marwa. It's just so important. Whatever we may be talking about today, we have to talk about this. So as you know, the Ukrainians using ATACMS missiles, which can only be targeted apparently with input from the American military, struck a target in Bryansk in Russia about a week ago. And the Russians responded with an unveiling of a remarkable new weapon, a hypersonic missile that apparently carries 6 warheads, each of which have 6 submunitions. And these warheads are independently maneuverable. And they're not, as I understand it, and I've been watching carefully commentary from people like Theodor Postel, who's an MIT expert in weapons technology. As I understand it, these things don't even necessarily have warheads on them. They're flying at, is there something going on outside your window?
Yeah.
What happened?
Okay. That was a big one.
Wow. You heard an explosion.
Yeah. I'm sorry for that. Yeah, just continue.
Okay. Let me know if you need to stop.
No, it's fine. It's just the first couple of seconds, and then it's fine.
Okay. In any event, apparently these things can cause massive destruction without even
Yeah.
carrying warheads because of the nature of the metal and the speed at which the projectile.
It's in brief, Dimitri, it is a non-nuclear weapon with nuclear power.
Right.
That's what it is.
Without the various negative effects of nuclear.
Effects of a nuclear weapon, yeah.
So,
And very fast, if I may.
right.
If it gets to the UK in 30 minutes, it gets to Germany in 10 minutes.
And can cover
It's
all of
very
Europe,
fast.
basically.
Yeah.
And as I understand it, it could even strike the northwest of the United States from a launch pad in the far east of Russia. So, in any event, this is a game changing, as many independent military commentators have said.
Now imagine if South Korea has one.
Right, or Ansar Allah in Yemen. In any event, um, and I think this was clearly a warning. And the warning was, the next time you do this, we may very well attack, or we will attack a Western military target. And it could be anywhere in NATO. And um, uh, alarmingly, Genocide Joe didn't get the memo because in the last 24 hours, the Russians themselves have said that 2 attacks were launched by Ukraine on Russian military targets in Kursk, and one of them caused casualties. And the Russian Defense Ministry said, I think it was this morning, that a retaliatory action is being prepared.
Yeah.
I think this is extremely worrisome, Marwa, and far more worrisome than anything that's happened.
But do you think this was not anticipated? I mean, do you think that Russia would accept to have unbalanced weaponry given to Ukraine, basically operated by Americans on Ukrainian land, hit Russians? And would you expect that Russia would not retaliate? Any other country would retaliate.
This is exactly the question that I have for you. So, and what I really want to focus on here is the timing. All of this insanity is happening, this lunacy coming from the Biden administration and his vassals in Europe in the past week. And at the same time, Israel is, in effect, entering into a surrender deal. I think that the mayors of Metula and Kiryat Shmona and Marialot are correct, because the whole purpose of the so-called invasion of South Lebanon has not been achieved. There is no security for the people living in the north of occupied Palestine, and it would be very easy for the Islamic resistance to continue to strike those communities, even if it did move all of its weaponry north of the Litani River, even if it didn't.
You know what? It strikes me a lot, Dimitri, that Zionist Israel identifies as an army with that's trying to turn itself into a nation, meaning all the residents of Margaliot and Kiryat Shmona and Metula are actually either reservists or have actually been soldiers in the Israeli occupation forces. And why do they find it hard to believe that people in South Lebanon who are carpenters and teachers and engineers and medics, and they are part of Hezbollah and they are militarized people? So they make it seem like Hezbollah are aliens wearing weapons all the time, that, okay, take away the weapons, are going to be able to take away the people. What makes Hezbollah? What is Hezbollah? They fail to understand that, and they fail to understand what is the resistance in Gaza itself. I mean, we've been watching the resistance in Gaza, what they are wearing, how they are operating. You remember the one who was later on martyred, the one who was dubbed the stylish resistance fighter, who was wearing this long manteau and fighting with Yasin 100 against Merkava tanks, because it is part of the people. Where is the resistance coming from? They fail to understand that, and they fail to understand that the world is at a crossroads. And if that crossroad is crossed by either side, no one will be left to help Israel. So they need to find a solution fast if they want to survive the wave that's coming, because it's going to be a wave that will have an entire impact on the entire globe. We might not be getting hit with missiles. We already got hit by missiles by the US, but we might not be hit with missiles in the war that was going to happen in the northern part of the planet, but we will be hit economically and financially. The entire world will be hit so. And if you look at the numbers of the Israeli entity, you see the losses that have been happening in the GDP of Zionist Israel and in the accreditation of financial crediting of the Zionist entity. It's at C minus financial wise.
Right.
So that's pushing away investors. Lebanon is already used to this. And by the way, putting that into two brackets, a friend of mine who fled to Iraq with her kids when the war started 2 months ago, when she heard that there was a ceasefire, she tried to contact the Middle East Airlines in Lebanon to find a flight to Lebanon. There are no more flights to Lebanon. You know why? They are overbooked. People heard the word ceasefire, and we have thousands, tens of thousands of Lebanese people who are diaspora all across the world trying to come back and see their families. If a ceasefire happens, Lebanon will be packed with at least 1.5 million visitors from outside, and they are all Lebanese people. This is how we revive our economy. What will Israel do? You have more than 2 million Israeli settlers who are already left permanently. They don't want to come back. You can read the statistics in Israeli entity newspapers. You can see that people who live in the north, they are afraid to go back to their farms, because they completely understand that Hezbollah will not be disarmed. This is a balanced equation in South Lebanon. So they need a ceasefire deal. They need it now, and they need it also in Gaza, because they don't have the capacity to take more missiles that might come from Gaza. Who knows what Gaza still has left underground? Yes, they were able to eliminate the leaders, but so they did in Lebanon, and Hezbollah was still intact. So are resistance factions in Gaza as well. And we keep forgetting to mention the West Bank as well, because they have expansionist plans for the West Bank, but it's daily confrontation in the West Bank. And now there are talk that if this escalates, there will be groups planning attacks from the Jordanian valley across the border. So it's not going to end there. It's not going to end there. And if they try to stop with Lebanon and then start something else with Syria, it's a war all over again. They cannot survive this, especially as we are so close to a world war where no one will be safe from missiles, and no one will have the time to talk about Netanyahu anymore.
Well, Marwa, it's always a great, great pleasure to speak with you. And I wish we were able to do so. And I hope that one day soon we will be able to have these conversations in a much more peaceful and humane setting than we have been obliged to do up until now.
I'm pretty sure you're going to come to Lebanon soon. You're going to come and you're going to celebrate victory with us, because even on the rubble, we will be celebrating, because we made sure that Israel does not infiltrate our land despite their air power. And I'll keep a couple of boots around my house that were worn once by Israeli entity settlers who were kicked out for you to see when you come back. Maybe a couple of bombs they left behind. You never know.
Inshallah. Thank you very much, Marwa. It's been a pleasure as always.
Thank you for having me, Dimitri.
And this is Dimitri Lascaris coming to you from Montreal for Reason to Resist on November 26, 2024.